Bine v-am găsit! Sunt Florentin Gheorghe, realizatorul emisiunii de vorbă cu Profu de română, o emisiune despre educație și cultură în care am încercat de fiecare dată să abordăm subiecte interesante cu invitați speciali, aș spune adevărați profesioniști în domeniile în care activează fiecare, și am încercat de fiecare dată să vă surprind plăcut, sper eu, atât prin subiectele dezbătute, cât și prin invitații pe care i-am avut aici în platou. De data aceasta o să fie o întâlnire prin Skype, deși data trecută invitata cu care vom discuta astăzi a fost aici în platou, a fost în România. Ei bine, acum ea este tocmai în Honduras, în America Centrală. Este vorba despre Rebeca VEGA, care este psiholog și mi-ar plăcea să o numesc și o bună prietenă de-a mea, de la care am învățat foarte multe lucruri interesante, atât în proiectul Erasmus, în care am cunoscut-o, cât și în emisiunea de data trecută. Becky, it's really a pleasure to have you back here at my TV show.
Thank you so much, Florentin, for having me back. It is such a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me too. I was telling to the people that are watching us that I learned a lot of things from you last time you were here at my TV show, and also in our conversation. You are inspiring people and you have a lot of many good ideas, and I'm very glad and excited that you accepted to share them with us again. Okay, now as I announced, I want to talk about teaching and teachers and students, actually education in general. And there are many types of teachers. Yeah, we know that, probably as students or probably as adults, parents, or teachers. We can see that there are different types of teachers. And I want you to tell us and to try to make a picture, a portrait of an ideal teacher. So, what are the characteristics of an ideal teacher?
Yeah, and having or painting a picture of an ideal teacher can be hard because you might say, well, maybe that characteristic is something that I don't have, or maybe it's something I need to work on. But that's okay. Who you are and the fact that you love what you do, that you love teaching, that you love being around your students and other colleagues, I think that is a great start to being an ideal teacher. If you do not love what you do, you're going to be frustrated. You're not going to put your effort and heart and soul into what you do. So I think that is one of the very, very best things that makes an ideal teacher is to love what you do. I think there are other characteristics that come with that and make a teacher or an ideal teacher much stronger. So some of those things are a teacher or a person who is adaptable. Adaptability is such a great quality because every year, maybe you have new students, or also every year your students get 1 year older. So when they come back after the break or summer and they come back to school, you have new students in a way, right? They have lived through different things, so they have changed as well. So as a teacher, to be adaptable to different environments, to be adaptable to accept other personalities and other people around you, I think is such a great characteristic that makes you a good and ideal teacher. I think also a teacher that shows leadership. Your students look up to you. Your students learn from you. And they learn more from your actions than they do from your words. And so if you can show good, safe leadership, then that makes you an ideal teacher. That is the title that you have, a teacher. You're teaching things. And sometimes we think as teachers, if we have been teachers, and those who are teachers think, I'm only teaching knowledge. I'm only teaching what's in the book. But that's not true. you're teaching many other things, and leadership is one of them. I think also as a teacher, a great characteristic is for you to be invested in building others up. You're teaching children, you're forming them into who they can be. You're helping them in the journey of finding out what they love, things they are passionate about. And so, I think that it being invested in them, knowing that the time that you put in to being with your students is meaningful and makes a difference in their life. I think a teacher should always be knowledgeable as well. Of course, a teacher should have knowledge, things that they already know, so that they can teach others. But at the same time, I think a teacher needs to be willing to learn continuously. As human beings, we never stop learning. So we need to learn continuously, to always update ourselves on the subjects and topics that we like. And then I think the last characteristic that I would say, there's many others, but I want to highlight just these. And I think that one of the last things that makes an ideal teacher is a teacher that understands self-care, a teacher that can care for themselves as well and as much as they can care for their students, for their job, and for the other people around them.
Oh, that's very nice. It's a very difficult picture of a teacher. To possess all these kind of qualities, because actually there are qualities. You said, I just remember a few of them. Adaptability, that's very important. And I can imagine the pandemic period when teacher really showed if they are adaptable or not. Leadership, yeah, because you really lead your students through knowledge and through development. And love, yeah, you said that you have to love what you do and to love your students, and like all the others, to have knowledge, and all of them are important. You said something before, that you don't have only to teach what it is in a book. And this is my next question for you. What do we teach? Do we teach knowledge, cognition, or attitudes, behaviors, or emotions? What do we teach?
As teachers, I want to say that you guys have such an incredible job. Teachers have an amazing job and such great opportunity to form lives, right? It's like clay. You take clay, or you take Play-Doh, and you're forming something, a sculpture. And so that's what teachers do, but they're doing it with lives. So it's such an important job, for sure. So what do teachers teach? Well, just like the first question, it has many different answers, not just one. But you teach many things, and you also teach through many things. So let me go kind of one by the things that you asked. So cognition. Yes, you teach, as teachers, you teach cognitive skills. When you do repetition, for example, in your classroom, children need repetition. Their brain needs to repeat things. So in fact, there's a small fact that says that children need about 400 repetitions to learn a concept or something new, unless you do it through play. When children play, their brain is activated, and so they will learn something much faster. Instead of 400 repetitions, then they only need 20 or 30. But those are cognitive skills. Repetition is a cognitive skill. Progressive drills, when you build up on a concept, where you start with something very small, and then you add information every day or throughout the week or throughout the day, that is a cognitive skill. You also, there's also feedback and different activities or progressiveness. Those are all cognitive skills that a teacher should know. These are skills that a teacher can use and skills that a teacher is teaching their students, which will help them with other things in life, with real life. So, do you teach cognition? You teach cognitive skills. You help children develop their brain in the way that they need. You teach knowledge, yes. When you teach the concepts that are in a book or that are in an essay or any of those materials. Do you teach them? Yes. Will every student learn exactly the same? Probably not. They might remember or they might write down the same thing on a test. But a month later or a year later, everyone learned something a little different, or it meant something a little different. Now here's where I think that teachers can make a much bigger difference in a student's life, and that is teaching emotions, attitudes, and behaviors. So it depends on the ages that you have in your classroom. But let me very quickly talk a little bit about the brain. So as we are growing, as children are growing, we have our brain. And for this, we're going to use our hand as a hand model. So the base of the brain is our survival brain. It takes care of things like breathing, like digesting, things we cannot control. And then we have the middle part of our hand, which is our emotional brain. That's where our emotions are. And then we have, if we cover it, we have this part of our hand, and this part is our cognitive brain, which is our thinking brain. So what happens? Our survival brain is developed when a baby is born. The emotional brain starts to develop once the baby is born until around the age of 12. So what does that mean? It means that ever since the baby is born, up until the age of 12, which is around 6th or 7th grade, maybe, the child is developing their emotions. The child is developing their attitudes and their behaviors. So as teachers, if you have children from 0 to around 12 years old, you need to focus on emotional regulation. You need to focus on the attitudes that children are forming within themselves. And then behaviors, teaching children how to react to their emotions. Now, around the age of 10 or 11, that's when the cognitive brain, the thinking brain, this part, the prefrontal cortex, which is right here, the frontal part of your brain, of your head, that part starts to develop around that age. That is when we teach knowledge. It's interesting how many different cultures have understood this. So Japanese culture, Finnish culture, Danish culture. When you do activities that teach you about life in the first years of your life, around up until the age of 10 or so. And then after the age of 9 or 10, then these cultures do testing. They do a test, or they do quizzes, or they do different things, and they study books and math after that age. And the reason why is because of how your brain develops. So when we understand how our brain develops, then we know what we need to focus on as teachers. So what do we teach? We teach many things. And one of the things that I want to tell teachers is, yes, you can teach cognitive skills. And yes, we need to teach knowledge as well, because the government says we need to, and education says we need to. But if you can add many hours of teaching emotional regulation, of teaching kids how to react to their emotions, their thoughts, their attitudes, and their behaviors, and how to modify their behaviors to what is correct, and what is safe, and what is respectful, then you are shaping lives forever. And you're shaping lives in the best way possible because you are changing their brain. You are molding their brain into who they really need to be. Good citizens, good people. You're not changing them. You're not changing their soul or their essence, but you're definitely giving them incredible tools to be good people when they grow up and as they grow up with each other and then with other people on the outside. So there are many different mental processes that you can teach, but I would say that can be your focus. And especially if you have younger students, and as they grow, also to be that reference. And one of the things that I want to tell teachers is, please remember that years from now, years and years and years from now, your students are not going to remember, I don't know, the number of pi. They're not going to remember many different things from the history books, but they will remember how their teacher treated them. They will remember that their teacher taught them that it's okay to be sad, to be angry, to be happy, to have emotions, but their teacher taught them to regulate those emotions and to react with the best behaviors, even when having those emotions. And they will remember that you made them feel safe. And I think last time I mentioned this, that every child, every person needs three things. They need to feel safe, they need to feel loved, and they need to feel heard. I'm sorry, seen, heard, and safe. And all these three things make them feel loved. So when a child feels loved, because they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel safe, they will know that that comes from their teacher. And that is what they will remember years and years from now.
Wow. Yeah, I really loved that example of yours with the brain and the hand. And I have to say that it's really important to understand how kids' brain is working in order to know how to act. And I really think that a teacher should also be a good psychologist. And when you realize that, how difficult and how important your role is, you would never treat your profession, your job, simply as a job. You realize that is a vocation. Becky will be back after a short break. Revenim după un scurt moment de publicitate. Am revenit, sunt alături de Rebeca VEGA, psiholog din Honduras, din America Centrală, cu care discutam despre educație, despre cum ar trebui să arate un profesor ideal și pe ce ar trebui să punem accentul atunci când predăm, pe cunoștințe, pe cogniție sau pe parte de emoții și de tot ce ține de comportamente, pe latura afectivă atitudinală. Discuția este foarte interesantă și mă bucur că mi-a acceptat invitația, chiar dacă de data aceasta prin Skype, pentru că nu ne putem vedea fizic, având în vedere distanța nu foarte mare dintre cele două țări. Hola Becky, ¿qué tal?
Hola Florentín, muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Yo también, and now I guess it's time to switch to English because my Spanish is over. We had a really nice conversation before the break, and I want to continue that with you. So, are there more areas teachers should focus on more than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, let me jump on the last question, which is we talked about learning about the child's brain and emotional regulation. So I definitely think that if and when teachers can focus their efforts into learning about the child's brain, I think that makes such a huge difference. The reason for that is understanding that not every child learns the same way. Not every child learns at the same speed. And not every child will have the same interest as others. But also not every child has the same brain and emotional capacity. For example, if you're dealing as a teacher in your classroom with 25, 30 students, or less, it can be 5 students or 10 students, however many you have in your classroom. Maybe there's a few children that have a very hard time at home. Maybe there are children who are going through very difficult situations, like parents separating or fighting, or parents being in a tense environment because there are difficulties, economical difficulties, or difficulties within the couple, maybe. Or maybe you're also dealing with a student who has been asked to leave their home, or maybe a family that has been forced out, or in your case in Europe, right, families who have been forced to migrate because of war or because of poverty or whatever the reason is. That child comes into your classroom already dysregulated emotionally. So they are not going to learn the same way as a child who is in a very loving environment, who's in a very safe and stable environment. And they're just not going to learn the same because their focus is not the same. And their brain cannot focus the same. A child who lives in a relatively safe environment where mom and dad love each other, where their home is safe and nice and warm, has had breakfast, has enough meals in the day where they feel satisfied, they are going to learn very differently and not just faster. And it does not mean that they are more intelligent. It just means that their brain and their body is ready to receive knowledge. But then you have the other child who may have been displaced or has childhood trauma because of war or being displaced or being thrown out of their house or being homeless, so many different things. And they do not have maybe the same meals or nice, good meals every day. So their body is dysregulated, which means their emotional regulation is pretty low as well. So you're going to be dealing with children who their brain is at different levels, at different capacities. And these children, for example, who come from hard places, they are not thinking, I need to learn about world history. They are thinking, is my mom okay? They are thinking, will we eat? How are my brother and sister? Will I see my dad or my mom again, or my grandparents? So their brain is in a very different area. So as teachers, I think if we focus on knowing and learning about the brain, learning about how to help children achieve emotional regulation, but then also I think that means that teachers need to be introspective and need to learn what their brain looks like as well, and how their brain is working and how they are dealing with their emotions. Can you as a teacher be emotionally regulated? Because if you are a emotionally regulated adult, you can help children regulate their emotions. So it's a process. And some of you might say, Becky, that's too difficult. Or you're talking about too many things all at once. But I want to say, you don't have to do it all at once. Maybe take one skill. Maybe take one thing that you want to focus on, and then build up on that. As a teacher, you know about cognitive skills, that when you teach something, you start with the simplest things, and then you add to it. So that's what you do with yourself when it comes to emotional regulation, when it comes to learning about the brain. You don't have to be a psychologist. You can be, it would be amazing, but you don't have to be. But you can learn that specific part. And all of a sudden, teachers will start to see their students. It's like when you put on glasses, you will start to see your students in a very different light. You will start to see their life. You will start to see their behavior. You will start to see their attitudes, their words in a very different way. And you will know, I need to be closer to this student today because they are emotionally dysregulated. I need to help them today, just a little more than yesterday. You know, and so it changes how you see your students. They're not just being disrespectful. They're not just being excited. There's something else going on. And that changes your perspective, and it changes you, and it makes you such an incredible teacher. And I think the second and third thing, I guess, that teachers should focus on, in my opinion, is teaching life skills. Again, children are not going to remember what year Napoleon lost his first battle. I don't remember, right? I don't remember that.
Me neither.
But, yeah, but we do remember. Oh, I remember when this teacher, I was having a bad day, and my teacher just came by and told me that I was doing amazing work. I remember how I felt. I remember how that teacher made me feel. I remember my teacher in 4th grade or in 6th grade that was always so reassuring and always told me that I could achieve anything I wanted. I remember that teacher. I remember their name. I remember their face. And so that is so much more meaningful. We do need to learn different knowledge, like the year Napoleon lost his first battle, which if I had an exam today, I would fail. But that's okay. That's okay. I think as teachers, there just needs to be a focus on also teaching that emotional regulation, but also life skills. So other life skills can be things like how do you react? How do you up to difficult things? Life is difficult. Life is great, but it can also be difficult. So how do you react to that? How do you do other life things like interpersonal relationships? In schools, there's a lot of drama, especially with pre-teenagers and teenagers. There's a lot of drama. You know, this girl stole this, or this girl looked at me the wrong way, or this boy, you know, we got in a fight, or someone took this, or you know what, boys and girls and girls and girls and boys, and these days they like each other and there's drama in their love life, right? But if we teach them, this is how you should react. This is how to not take things personally. This is how you can have a difficult conversation with your best friend. We see that all the time. Oh, she or he was my best friend, but now we don't talk to each other. Well, we can teach them a life skill of conversation, of confrontation, of saying, hey, this is how you can confront someone with respect. This is how you can have a difficult conversation with respect. It will make you a much better person, and it will teach you about life. Because if they learn to ignore, to never speak to that person again, then how are they going to be when they are adults? When they have a problem in their job, or with their boss, or with their boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse. So we need to teach them those life skills, good communication with each other, and what that really means. But I think also the fourth area a teacher should focus on is themselves, because a teacher should also know and be an example, and also know how to have these good life skills. If a teacher is a person that ignores their conflict always and cannot have a good, safe conversation when in conflict or when just on a regular day, then that's going to be very hard to teach. We don't have to be perfect. And I say we because I was a teacher. I did teach high school and elementary school for a few years. We don't have to be perfect. Even as psychologists, we don't have to know it all or do everything perfectly well to teach it. But we need to try to work on it. And it makes such a difference in the child's life and for the rest of their life.
Becky, one idea I remember from our last conversation, our last show, and I really like it. It was that of connecting with your students. And since then, since we talk about that, I'm very careful about that, because it really is important. And I want to point this idea again because I don't think teachers give too much attention to that, and unfortunately I say that. I want to ask you, why is it important to connect with your students?
Yes, I remember our conversation, and I'm so glad that you have taken it into account. I have actually seen on your social media how you have given importance to connecting with your students, and I think that it's so important to connect with our students because of several reasons. So going back to what we said about the brain, when we understand how brain develops, we said we have a survival brain, we said we have an emotional brain, and we said we have a thinking brain. So if our survival brain, which is at the base, right, of our brain, if that one works well, then our emotional brain can start to work. When our emotional brain works well, then our thinking brain works well. It's building up. And the thing is, our brain works and is activated when we can connect with people. So a baby, for example, a baby's brain is activated with many different neurotransmitters, with many different what people call hormones, like dopamine and serotonin, with cortisol, which is a stress hormone, but adrenaline also. All of those neurotransmitters are activated through relationship. So a baby has their neurotransmitters activated by his or her parents. So when a mom comes and picks up the baby and says, "Baby, it's okay," and then feeds the baby and, cleans the baby and does everything that the baby needs. So we may think as a child is growing, they need adults less. But reality is, as we grow, we need other human beings more. We need connection. We are beings, we're human beings, and we're beings that need connection at all times. Sometimes, and you might say, well, I'm an introvert, so I need time alone. Yes, you need time alone. That's okay. But throughout the day, throughout the weeks, throughout the months, you need connection with people in order to keep your brain healthy, in order to keep your brain working. So, why do I say that? Because as teachers, you work with the brain when you're teaching knowledge. You work with the brain when you're playing with your students and when you're doing several different things. So connection is important with your students because that's how they will learn better. That's how they will remember, is through the connection that they build with you. We have also talked about in the past about how connection can make you feel safe or unsafe. We know people who are unsafe to us, people who can be manipulative or people who can try to damage us. But then we also know, and our brain can tell when there's a person who can be safe for us. So as teachers, we need to try to be safe people so that we can connect with students a whole lot better, so that we can activate their brains for learning and then for other interpersonal relationships. It's very important. And I think it just comes down to saying that again, through repeating that again, which is when you connect with your students, you activate their brain and you activate their emotional brain and their thinking brain.
Yeah, I totally agree with this idea, but some say, I don't care if my students like me. Important is to learn something from me. Is it so? I mean, can students learn from a teacher they don't like?
That's a very interesting question. Can a student learn from a teacher they don't like? Yes. Yes, they can. Of course, because they are being forced to learn. They're being forced to memorize, they're being forced to perform in a classroom environment with a teacher who doesn't connect with them. So a student will learn a concept, they will do well on a test, they will finish the final project because they are obligated to do so. Now, will this teacher make a lasting effect on the student? The answer is also yes, but it may not be as positive as one might think. Most likely, that student, number one, is going to say, I don't even remember that teacher, I just remembered that I didn't like them and they didn't like us. And number two, there's just going to be such a missed out opportunity. I think that when a teacher says, well, they need to learn about me, they need to respect me, I'm the one who's important, I'm the teacher, they're the student, I know everything, they know nothing, I think that's ego. And I think that's so wrong. It's so wrong. And so it just doesn't make that, those characteristics and that description does not make for a good teacher. It does not make for a teacher that is going to make an impact beyond the classroom. Will students do well on a test? Maybe, probably. But definitely it's a teacher who doesn't like their job, who's probably there just for the money. And it's unfortunate because it's such a missed opportunity to make a difference and an impact in people's lives for the future, not just for a moment.
What kind of relationship should a teacher have with his or her students? What are the borders between being their friend, I don't know, their teacher, their parent?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my line of work, I work with families and I work with kids from hard places. And something that I always tell teachers also when I do training, that I tell adults, is you have to remember that you are the adult. We're not here to be friends. So as teachers, as parents, we're not the child's friend, but we can be friendly. Mm-hmm. We, as teachers or as parents, we have the authority, but with the children, we can share the power of the relationship. And so what does that mean? Is I can be friendly, I can laugh, I can play. One thing that I need to remember as a teacher is that a child's language is play. How many repetitions does a child need to learn a concept? Around 400 repetitions.
Whoa.
Unless, yeah, a lot. Unless we do it through play. When we play, then a child only needs 20 to 30 repetitions to learn that same concept, because play is the child's language. So we can play with them, we can be friendly, but we are not there to keep their secrets, which is a terrible thing. I always tell children, you can never have secrets with an adult. Any adult that asks you to have a secret with them is not a safe adult. We're not there to do the wrong thing with a child, for them to have an idea. We are not there for children to lead us into doing what they want or getting what they want. We are there as adults, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a parent, or any other significant adult in a child's life. The adult is there to lead and to show and to be an example. So if we want the child to be happy, to play, to laugh, we need to be happy to play and to laugh. So as a teacher, what kind of relationship you should have? Then you should have for me, in my perspective, you should have a friendly relationship, but one where you and the child understands that you are the leader, that you are the example, and that you are transmitting all of that information of life skills, of emotional regulation, of play, of positive attitudes or good behaviors, safe behaviors. The adult is modeling that. So can we give hugs? Can we do certain things? That depends on the rules that you have in your government or in your schools. I know some schools in some countries that it's not allowed to give a child a hug. I don't agree with that, but I understand why they have those rules. So we need to follow the rules that we have in place where we work. But if that's allowed, then I think there are limits to that. So as a teacher, for example, I would put limits where you are never alone with a student in an enclosed environment. So for example, you're never alone with just 2 students in a classroom. That's a limit. That's a safety limit for you as a teacher and for the children. If you are going to give hugs or demonstrate any affection, then make sure that you're demonstrating affection to all of your students that accept or want that affection. Not just a preference for a small group or 1 or 2 students. Those are limits, and those are safety limits for you as a teacher and for the students. And then I think a third limit that I would say, or that I would recommend, is the one I mentioned before. There are no secrets. Secrets are not a good thing. Confidentiality is a very different thing than a secret. Confidentiality is if a student comes to you and says, Florentin, or I don't know what students call you in Romania, but for me, a student would call me Miss Becky or Miss Vega, and I would say yes, and they might say, I need to talk to you. I want to share something very delicate or very important that's happening in my life, or very difficult. And I can say, okay, would you like to stay after class? And so they can stay, but the door always stays open. I always say that in my class. My door always stays open. And if we can talk close to the door, that's going to be so much better, because everybody can see. And so it's a safety thing. The child can share what they have to tell me. But if it's something that I need to take to the authorities, to school authorities or legal authorities like police or investigation or whatever that may be, I need to tell the student. I need to tell them, for your safety, I need to share this with an authority. Or for your safety, I'm going to write a report, and we need to report this. And I want to help you as we report this. I'm here for you. So I'm reassuring the student, but I'm also doing what's right. And that is confidentiality. Confidentiality means I'm not going to tell everybody. I'm not going to tell the other students. I'm only going to tell the person, the people that need to know to keep that child safe. But there are no secrets. So when a student comes up to me, even if they're in like 1st grade, you know how little kids always say, I want to tell you a secret, I love you, you know, or I want to tell you a secret, this happened. I always tell my students there are no secrets. Secrets with adults are not good things to have.
Okay.
So we teach, which is a life skill. So, you know, you have to put those limits in place, which will keep you safe as a teacher and will keep your students safe, but also not forgetting that connection and that relationship, which can shape a student or a child for life.
I still have a lot of questions for you, but because we are out of time, I just want to ask you if you can answer very shortly to this question. What is more important, to be a well-prepared teacher or to be a good teacher? Very, very short, if you can.
That's a very difficult one to answer. What does it mean to be a good teacher or a well-prepared teacher? I think both or neither. I think you need to be a teacher that loves being a teacher, that loves teaching and loves their students.
Thank you, Becky. It really is a pleasure to listen to you and to talk to you. For me, as I said, you are inspiring, and I want to be Becky sometimes, and I want to talk more often to you, because you really teach us life lessons and how to be a good teacher and how to interact with your students, and I really thank you for that, and I'm pretty sure that all my followers and the people who will see this show will love your ideas and will thank you for that. Thank you again. Vă mulțumesc și dumneavoastră pentru că ne-ați urmărit. Nu uitați să ne urmăriți în fiecare miercuri și vineri pe Columna TV de la ora 18, precum și pe YouTube sau pe Facebook, Florentin Profu de Română, unde încărcăm aceste emisiuni și le puteți urmări de fiecare dată când doriți. Pe curând!